No, are you serious? I do when I can.
Oh dear.
You know what I read this every week, and then I Google anything that I have questions.
15 seconds.
And then if I need to, I'll call the department director and ask him if I can't find it on Google.
It's always in the public packet. Online, on the website, always.
All right, thanks everybody for being here.
I read.
I feel a little crowded. No, I'm just kidding. It's good to have everybody back up on the dais. We'll go through this agenda and get our questions answered. I think we've got a couple of folks from the public to speak as well. All right, first on the list, we have our approval of minutes, June 28th, 2021, 5 p.m. work session, July 6th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. work session, and city council regular meeting, July 6th, 2021, 6 p.m. Any questions? All right, next is approval of monthly bills. Approve June 2021 monthly bills. Any questions? Okay, resolutions. I'm going to start with the two that are on the DU packet. I think there was an issue getting them onto they were entered into the wrong system, but they were entered at time. So the first one is resolution 21-191 manhole rehabilitation project. Jimmy, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Mr. Ladner. Thank you. This expenditure request will be for the rehabilitation of 320 manholes in our wastewater system. This will take place in the Basin 7, which was a high priority basin from our 2020 SSDS study. This work will go along with minimizing and mitigating the sanitary sewer overflows in the system. We had a total of 4 responsive bidders for this project, and we will recommend awarding this work to Gulf Coast Underground for $518,050. Gulf Coast has done a lot of work for DU in the past on our manholes in the system, and has done a really good job, so we'll recommend awarding this contract to them again this year.
Okay, any questions? All right, the next one is resolution 21-192 professional services agreement for engineering services. Jimmy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ladner. This will be to enter into a professional services agreement with Garver LLC out of Huntsville, Alabama. This will be for a comprehensive study of DU's wastewater system. It will specifically be focused on our wastewater treatment plant and the influent collector gravity sewer mains that feed the plant. We'll also take a look at our lift station number 7, which is in Basin 7 off 5th Street Northwest. The study will include a condition assessment of the 3 large collector lines that run from Moulton Street to the wastewater treatment plant via CCTV and sonar inspection. There will also be an extensive analysis of the wastewater treatment plant and the overall collection system hydraulic models that will evaluate the potential to improve reception of inflows at the wastewater treatment plant. This will also give us an opportunity to alter flows at the Basin 7 lift station by replacing that lift station possibly with a new gravity flow condition. This study will also provide a budgetary opinion of cost and an overall master plan. These areas with the overall goal of eliminating SSF. So this project will be an expenditure for $255,200, and we'll be seeking the council's approval.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Any questions on that one? All right, thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next is resolution number 21-182, approve a special use permit for T-Mobile equipment modification at 1823 Magnolia Street Southeast. David?
Yes, sir, President, Council, Mayor. David Andrews with CMS, the city's consultant for wireless telecommunication. This resolution is for an application that was made by T-Mobile. It's for a 5G upgrade at this facility. This is on the water tower that's located at 1823 Magnolia Street. Currently, T-Mobile has taken all their antennas off of the tower because it was being repainted, and they were servicing the area with a cow or cell on wheels. They're going to replace these antennas back on the tower at this time, and it will be a 5G upgrade. So currently, there's no antennas on the tower. There were antennas a few months ago, but they took them off. They're gonna replace those antennas. They're gonna put 6 new antennas on the tower and 1 feed line. And this, again, will accomplish a 5G upgrade at this facility. CMS has reviewed the application and recommends approval.
Thanks, David. Any questions?
David, is that a true 5G upgrade? It sounds like T-Mobile has a different,
Yes, sir, it will be a 5G upgrade for that area. The immediate area will get the best results for the 5G upgrade. Once you get up into 5G, you go really high up into the frequency that's being transmitted and received from that facility. And once you go higher in the frequency, the propagation from the site is less. So it will still provide the same LTE and the same voice service from that tower, but they'll add 5G. So the residents within several thousand feet of that site will see a definite increase in speeds, internet speeds, and download speeds. Now, we'll come to the point where they want to build small cells to fill in the spots to tie everybody back into the 5G network. So, but the residents within several thousand feet will experience it. Now, if you're in that area, you're going to show 5G on your phone, although you may be getting not all of the benefits of 5G, but the surrounding area of that water tower will receive those benefits.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thanks, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Next is resolution number 21-183, declare surplus and municipal items no longer needed by the IS department.
Brad Phillips, Director of Information Systems. Yes, this is a resolution to declare surplus computers we no longer need. It's a thing we do about once or twice a year, just authorizing us to do it.
Okay. Any questions? Thanks, Brad. Resolution number 21-184, approved budget amendment for community development travel, $2,500 funding source, the general fund unassigned balance.
Yes, Council, this is a resolution to approve additional monies in the community development budget for Mr. Dane Shaw to be able to travel to DC on the Chamber of Commerce trip they do annually.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thanks, Kyle. Resolution number 21-185, approved 2021 JAG grant application. Suzanne.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Suzanne Taylor, Grants Administrator. This application of 2021 Edward Byrne Memorial JAG Grant is a total of $16,590, which $6,590 is for Morgan County and $10,000 is for the city. The Decatur Police Department will purchase radar guns and the county will purchase spike strips and breathalyzers.
Okay, any questions for Suzanne? Thank you. All right, resolution number 21-186, approve architectural services for Davis Court Trail improvements. Alan.
Yes, sir, Alan Stover, Community Development. This is the project that we're doing with CDBG funds, and we're just trying to get Barnett Architectural Services to do the drawings. It'll be CDBG funded, so we're just asking your approval. It's $20,000 for the service.
Where is that?
It's on the corner of Davis Court and Washington Street, right there at Dry Branch.
Okay. Any questions for Alan? All right, next is resolution number 21-187, approve Everyday Sunshine Park project to move forward.
Community Development and Parks and Rec just wanted to get the council's approval to move forward with this project. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, or a month, I guess, ago, we came to you with what the plans were for the Everyday Sunshine Park. And anything that we do, we would bring back to you, but there is some things that we're gonna have to start moving on if we're gonna, this is a project that we're gonna start, so we just wanted y'all's approval so that we could start moving forward.
Okay, any questions? Ms. Allen? Approved lease agreement with Town of Trinity regarding former police shooting range on landfill property. Mr. Marks?
I guess that'd be me.
That's you.
There is an old shooting range at the landfill that our police department uses, the updated one. The Trinity has been using it, but they want to make some improvements. It's on landfill property, which is owned by the city and the county. What this basically does, it just authorizes a lease of that property to the town of Trinity. That way they can make improvements to the property. The county attorneys reviewed it, I've reviewed it, and the town of Trinity's attorneys reviewed it. And it basically just authorizes them to continue doing what they're doing, but with the understanding they're gonna make some improvements. But they needed some confirmation that they have the right to use it for the next 10 years in order for them to justify spending the money. I've checked also with the police chief, and we presently do not have a use for it. In fact, it's a win-win. Trinity wins and we win because you get to have a shooting range that's improved, and they can take advantage of it, and we can watch them do that.
Okay. Any questions? Thanks.
Where are we gonna spend that $1 per year we're leasing it for?
We're gonna have to get Kyle to help us with that investment. I hope he can get more than what we're getting on the other.
Go.
Alright, resolution number 21-189, Educational Building Authority financing approval for Decatur Heritage Christian Academy. Alright.
Education Building Authority, it's an authority that's established by state law, and the articles of incorporation were approved by us. This is a refinancing basically for Decatur Heritage, and it's a maximum borrowing of $3.7 million, or $3.75 million. We have to, as a council, y'all have to approve that. But please understand, we are in no wise obligated for the repayment of it. We're just saying it's okay for you to finance this or refinance it, and we move forward. And the mayor will after next Monday's meeting, if y'all approve this, he will do a certification that just basically says, that's for internal revenue purposes. It basically says this has been approved, and that there was a hearing held and all that. So they held their hearing last Thursday. But basically all we're saying is go for it. And it's gonna be with Renaissance Bank. They borrowed 5.2, now they've reduced it down to 3.750. Thank y'all.
Any questions?
It's another win-win.
Good. Any questions?
Make sure
on
it's
that
not,
You've got another one.
I think the next is not me.
one? Alright, next is resolution number 21-190, approve updated department head residency policy.
So we're back again on residency. We're proposing a revised resolution that very specifically calls out that future appointments to police chief, fire chief, and city clerk will require residency for appointment in the city of Decatur limits. It also spells out that any employee presently in those positions or currently moving based on an appointment for that requirement will continue to do so in that position. That appointment will remain in standing for residency. It also says that an unauthorized failure to comply with that requirement for those three positions is subject to corrective action, and you can see that language in that paragraph. We also spell out that for the purposes of this resolution, the other department head positions that report to the mayor outside of those three are no longer required to remain in the city. As we've seen through history, those appointments have been made with the residency requirement, but we continue to have department heads move out or not move to the city of Decatur under that requirement. So we've removed the long-standing requirement and made it less subjective, and it applies to the three positions. All other department heads live where they want to. That's the proposal.
Okay, any questions? So just to be clear, all future would be default, but there would be no requirement outside of the three positions that are called out. The default would be no requirement. The council could require it in the job description, but the default would be no. And then any past requirements that are currently, on the books, they're currently employed and had an agreement that they would live in the city, we're basically not gonna require that anymore.
This would become the overriding resolution, yes.
Except for the three.
Except for the three.
That called out. Okay. Any other questions? All right, and then the next one is resolution 21-179, approved temporary residency deviation, Wanda Tyler, landfill recycling director, which was a vote that was tabled last week, and if we approve the one previous, then this one would not be
Obsolete.
needed.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, any questions? Thanks, Rochelle. All right, ordinances, first reading. Chip, you just want to go through all these?
Sure.
One at a
I would
time?
like to spend this time with y'all.
Okay. Well, do you want to go one at a time?
I will.
Okay.
I'll do them as a group, but they'll be in order.
Before you start on this matter, I'm gonna go ahead and recuse myself from these ordinances, from speaking of any of these ordinances at this moment in time, and remove myself from the podium.
All right, so basically we've got ordinance number 21-4463, through ordinance number 21-4470. And they're all amending sections of the, ambulance ordinance, is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll let you take it from there.
You can pass those, take one and pass those on. That is a cheat sheet. That is I started off with the ordinance sections as written. The red are things that were added, the green is what was taken out. At the May ARB meeting, the ARB voted on several recommendations, one being the ARB recommended the city council response time, changed the response time for emergency calls and city limits to 540 seconds, that provisions allowing time exceptions be eliminated, and that roll calls will be counted as time when the response time was not met. Same things for the police jurisdiction, several other issues. They tabled at the May meeting the issue of a quasi-governmental entity getting not having to file a financial statement. The reason for that being the parent company, which is where it would come from, presumably would be a multi-million-dollar corporation to have a lot more information than we needed to do that. And they voted last month to change that requirement to requiring a corporate guarantee from the parent company, assuring that they would stay in business and support that business or the ambulance business during the 5 years.
Is that one of these items?
Yes,
Okay.
it's in there. And so I went through some of the things that they recommended were covered in different sections. It turns out there's 8 sections in the ordinance that have to be amended to meet what the ARB recommended. Going through those individually, section 312 would be changed. You can see that all of those have to do with application requirements for government or quasi-government entities. They would have to list their name and contact information, but since there's not officers and owners and directors and things like that, there wouldn't have to be a separate list of those people. And in section C, the criminal histories of officers, obviously that's not going to be appropriate either, so they're they would be exempt from that. D of that section just added the government or quasi-government entity to the applicant. Same thing for E and F. deleted was the applicant must provide the city proof of a performance bond, because another provision said that the performance bond was gonna be eliminated, so that came out. And it adds there that the corporate guarantee would cover that requirement. And the business plan is not required for a government or quasi-government entity as well. In H, the reference to the performance bond is also taken out. That's all the changes that would be made to 312. In 317, there's not a lot of changes.
Hey, hold on.
Sure.
Can we just cover 312?
Sure. Whatever.
How do we define quasi-government?
There's not a definition in there, but the way we're treating it is an entity that's created by state government. Hospital authorities are created by state governments. There are others that meet that criteria. They are not technically government, but they are created by an act by the state legislature.
And so on I think you mentioned we would have a corporate guarantee in lieu of an audited financial
Correct.
statement. What about some type of certificate of good standing from their accounting firm that they use? Do you think that's an option?
It could, I don't think anybody that would be applying would have a problem with that.
Well, there's no way for us to know.
Right, but to be a government or quite a government, you sort of presume that they've got the financial backing to do it. And so there would be no problem adding that. If you want to, when we're drafting it, it was based on the fact that if the parent company, UAB system, or university system was backing an ambulance service, that there would be enough funds there to keep them operating.
And then I would say, personally, I think an audited financial could be changed to either reviewed or some kind of certificate of good standing from a CPA for any applicant.
Sure.
Would be something I would at least want to discuss. I know that's something you guys have brought up in the past about, and I agree. An audit is expensive, and I doubt we would really do much review on it. So I think some type of review statement would be fine.
Okay. That can be added.
Hey, Chip, do you have an extra copy?
I do.
Do y'all have a copy? Would y'all want one to follow along?
Please. I think that's all my questions.
Okay.
If y'all got any.
You covered mine.
Okay, in section 17, the heading is causes of revocation for the CPNC. Like I said, there's not a lot of changes. In section 9, which deals with being revoked because you don't have liability insurance or a performance bond, we just took out performance bond because that is no longer an issue.
So we're removing that for any applicant, or just?
Yeah, no performance bond. This is the ordinance being changed, and that is just to clean up the decision made before that we were not going to require the current provider to have a performance bond. So we were waiting until we were making amendments to the ordinance anyway to take that requirement out, and so that would come out, that nobody would have to have a performance bond. The 318 procedure for revocation of CPNC, we took out the notices. Part of the procedure is that we would serve notice of the potential revocation on the surety listed on the performance bond. Since there's not a performance bond, those references would come out. And that's all the changes in 318. In 319, we added that the city may, for good cause shown, assist the interim provider financially or otherwise. What it said before was that the performance bond would be in place in case the only provider or a provider left during the night, just shut down, and we had to call on somebody else to bring trucks and employees in, that that performance bond would be used to pay their additional expenses. This authorizes the city in that situation to help as needed, whether it be, and of course it would have to be approved at the time by the council. It could be financially, it could be putting firefighters on the trucks if they don't have enough people, they don't have the communications with 911 and things like that. That would just be for interim providers in the event that we were left without a provider, and just, I guess, making it easier for somebody coming in from outside on 2 hours notice to operate. And then we took out things from about the proceeds from the performance bond, since there would not be one. In section 320, the operating regulations, we changed in section B, 320 paragraph B, changed the mileage requirement on the ambulance to 250,000 miles.
And what was it previous to that?
200,000. And then skipping down in H, in section H, we are changing the response time requirements in the police jurisdiction from 8 minutes, which are 8 minutes to 9 minutes, which is 540 seconds, and reducing the penalty for a first offense for a quarter being under 90% to $5,000, and on the second offense, on the consecutive quarter, it would be 10,000. I believe it was 20,000 on the last one before. And then the section 4, same changes for the police jurisdiction, from 12 minutes to 13 minutes, and again 10,000 to 5,000, and 20,000 to 10,000. In section 5, part of the recommendation was that any call that has to be rolled to another ambulance provider because the provider is unable to, for any reason, respond, that be counted against the provider and their fractal response time. It would probably help. Fractal response time, people get confused about. It's not an average response time, so that you don't have to put a figure in there. Fractal response time, it's a pass-fail for every call, and 90% of your calls have to pass the time requirement. So if you miss it by 5 seconds, or if you miss it by 5 hours, it counts as you not making that call one time. So you don't have to have a time for this roll call. That call would just go down as a time that it did not meet the criteria. So that's what fractal response does. And then in K 1D, since earlier the exceptions were eliminated, section D there would come out. The next page, paragraph 3B, talking about the financial statements, listing all the assets and liabilities, all that, it would not be required for a government or quasi-government entity for the reasons we discussed earlier. And then in H, the requirement that any legal claims against the service be reported. On that one, we limited the claims that have to be reported to ones that were against the ambulance part of their operations, not the corporate entity with, you know, who knows how many claims they would have had. This would just be against the ambulance service rather than the whole entity. Section 3-32 would be repealed, all that.
Hang on.
Oh, okay.
On the previous, help me understand that there's no more, the exception
Remove,
for,
yeah.
can we talk about that? Just,
D.
yeah. So right now, if there's, an issue, they can fill out a form requesting an exception.
Correct.
Be made on that particular call. So
Correct.
what's the change from that? So,
That when it was 8 minutes and 12 minutes, they had a right to ask for an exception for some extraordinary circumstance that would take that out of the mix. Historically, very few of those have been filed. Historically, the position has been that we're real close and that just not to solve. The ARB's position was, by giving the extra minute, there's not going to be the need to make the time exception requirement request. Those are consistently a problem. They, you know, months later they come in, it's hard to do, but so we just took that section out at the ARB's request, so that they got 9 and 13, which is what they're asking for. As a trade-off, the time exceptions came out.
I think we should consider leaving the form, them being able to request an exception. That doesn't mean it's approved, right? I mean, the ARB
Correct.
has to approve it, but it still would, right now, it's a 48-hour, within 48 hours, it has to be filed.
Correct. That's what it's supposed to
And
be.
if that isn't done and we're giving additional time and there's an exception that should have been reported, but it doesn't happen in 48 hours, there's no way I'm ever gonna approve it. So I think that's something we could consider leaving, but that's just my own opinion. But anyway.
Easy change. I mean, if that's the council's request, I mean, obviously we can leave that in.
I think that's still fair. There could be some legitimate reason for an exception needs
Sure.
to be requested.
Okay. Did that cover yours too, Carlton? Okay. The 332, repealing the performance bond requirement in its entirety, and this 338 is another just cleanup of the reimbursement to DFR for medication and equipment used by the provider. When we attempted to collect under that, the state issued a thing that said that would be them distributing drugs and that they were not allowed to do it. So we took that out. And then in 340, the financial penalties, we added the provision, it's in some of them, but not in all of them. We added F, which says that any appeal of a financial penalty must be filed within 14 days of that decision, or it's waived. Right now, there's some that are open-ended and there's never a deadline, and that's just cleaning up to make sure that 6 years from now, there can't be an appeal.
Which one is that?
That's the very last, it's F, it's the very last thing in the set of papers, I guess.
Section
So
340.
filed with the EMS coordinator, ARB, and the city clerk.
Right. And it just has to be, across the board, the appeal to each level has to be done within 14 days of the decision that's being appealed from, so that it's not just open-ended.
Okay, any questions?
Can you touch on 338 one more time, please?
I can give it a shot.
Replace all medications except Schedule II narcotics. So are there times where
Here was the issue. It was an existing issue when the new ordinance was written, and we added this section to try to correct that. What happens is that if DFR is there first, we've got medication and equipment and stuff that we would start using. And it was practice in the past, as long as I've been here from Dempsey and when first response first arrived, that if we pick a drug, any drug, you know, that we gave it, they're gonna be billing for it on their transport. It's part of their package of stuff they bill for, so they get reimbursed for it, but we used it. And so it used to be just a gentleman's agreement that they would say, here is the, you know, here's what you use, so then we've got it, we don't have to buy it again, and they're billing for it anyway. That was not happening, so we put this in the ordinance. First time we tried to collect it, they went to the state, and the state issued an order that said, that's them distributing drugs, and they're not allowed to do that to another entity. They can just give them to the people. So it appears that the drugs we're using, they're billing for, but there's nothing, we can't do anything about that, so we just eat those.
All right, any other questions for Chip? It's a lot.
Yes,
It is a lot.
not at the moment, probably have some of them next week.
Well, sure, you know where my office is.
Bet
Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night talking ambulance jargon, and so it just call me anytime.
All right.
You don't count sheep, you count ambulances?
I count ambulances.
All right, thanks, Chip. We do have two members of the public here to speak. Mr. Childers, Mr. Kirby, either one of y'all, whoever wants to go first, is fine. You can go first. All right. Are you speaking on those past items?
I'm gonna try my best.
I will say one thing, you can go ahead, but, I should have mentioned this before, we were gonna have a work session tonight, regarding, the issues, brought up last week when Mr. Childers was here, and possibly ending the resolution of allowing the transport, so, that discussion, but, a couple of members, we didn't have anybody that could be here from the fire department, and also Mr. Jackson, wasn't available, so, or he's not here, but, we're looking for a time to do that. I know we talked earlier, I guess, into last week, and we'll try to find a date to continue that conversation when everybody's available. But I'll give Mr. Jackson this week and find a time that works for him and make sure you guys can attend as well. So I just want to mention that.
Thank you. Mayor and council, thanks for having me here and allowing me to speak on this. I know there's been a ton of information thrown to you guys tonight in regards to this. I think Chip would agree with me on this. We'll agree that this ambulance ordinance, chapter 3, has become a real issue for he and I both, and we'd probably like to just forget about it. But we can't, because we need some kind of structure here in Decatur. I'm just gonna hit on the topics that Chip hit on really, really quick and give you our standpoint on it. There in 312, section A, we start talking about quasi-government entity. Really, what is a quasi-government entity? And why shouldn't they be on the same playing field as us? Okay, so we look at the entity name, date, organization, things of that nature. We understand all that part, but we believe that it should be due an equal process and protection. Okay, both of us protected, when we all know who we're speaking about. When we go down to section C, subsidiaries of government, quasi, again, seeking to obtain a CP&C are exempt from this requirement on C. Talking about the arrests and the federal, if there's any federal or state crimes, they've got a board of directors like we do. They've got officers like we do. Just because you're a quasi-government doesn't mean you don't have skeletons in your closets. Except, for some reason or other, it's being put out there that we want to keep that closet door shut, when we had to disclose this in our CP&C application. We just think that that's not fair at that point in time either. Judgments against any, E, I'll jump down to E really quick, judgments, that's already part of it, I think that's very, very fair. If the ambulance service, not a holder or a umbrella corporation has a lawsuit, that lawsuit may not have anything to do with the ambulance part of it. I would say, just a suggestion, 22 years experience, anything, a lawsuit against a company that has to do with patients. Might not be a motor vehicle accident, but it has to do with patient care. That's the way a lot of cities have it written there on that. We'll agree with F on that same chapter about the performance bond. With that 5-year business plan, we submitted a 5-year business plan. Just because you're a government entity or quasi-government entity, that doesn't take the place of planning. Doesn't take the place of planning. We start talking about hospitals being quasi-government entities. I'd like each person in here to go to Dr. Google, as we call it. How many hospitals have went out of business since 2018? So just because you're a quasi-government entity doesn't mean if you're losing money, you're going to continue losing money and sign a contract with the city, you're going to stay here for 5 years and continue to lose money through that 5 years. So we would disagree with that. Moving really, really quickly. $318 was okay. When we start looking at them providing a letter of recommendation or something of that nature, there again, I was very pleased to hear you talk about the audited financial. They are very, very expensive, and we do understand that. And there, anybody that would apply that's a hospital system, their financial document's probably going to have more zeros on it than ours. So we can agree with that. Again, when we look over, before we get to section 320, we look at the section C, I think it's 319. Yes, section C, 319. The performance bond on in here, Mr. Alexander was speaking about being able to compensate, the city compensate for an interim provider. I don't know that that's particularly the way to look at it, because compensate is a subsidiary. And once you start that, it's easy to give money away, hard to take money back. Again, that doesn't affect us. If we go out of business, it affects the next person in, and it affects the taxpayers' money as well as the council and their money. On 320, section B, 320, again, we're talking about 6-year-old ambulances there. There was no change in that from the ARB. We've researched cities throughout the state of Alabama, and in doing so, I can't find anything where anybody says, this is the limit on years, this is the limit on mileage. Most companies, they utilize vehicles with proper maintenance that pass a state inspection, and then once that vehicle starts to have to go to maintenance more often, and the maintenance that is being spent on that vehicle exceeds the replacement of that vehicle, that's when you buy a newer vehicle.
But there would be no oversight. You would do that on your own.
Well, I believe that the system that we have in place now, under the ordinances in 2019 that was passed, annual safe and sound inspection of the trucks, I thoroughly believe in that under a certified mechanic. That's not, you go pay the guy at the Quick Lube or somewhere like that. A certified mechanic and repair shop, safety sound inspection, I believe that needs to be done. It doesn't matter if you have 2023 model trucks. I believe that needs to be done annually and turned into the city or the fire department, or governing body. I definitely believe in that.
I guess if, I'm just thinking
Sure, yes, sir.
And not to get way sidetracked, but if we allowed a truck that passed an inspection that had 600,000 miles on it, and something happened, something's just not sitting with me right there. I mean, that's, it might be good that day, but the likelihood it's gonna be good for the next year diminishes greatly throughout that year if it's an annual inspection.
Yeah, and I do see what you're saying about 600,000 miles. I
Which
totally.
and it would be totally up to you when you replaced it, if there's no oversight. or there's
Right.
nothing.
Exactly, and that's a good point to be made. Again, when your cost of repairs, and believe me, if you're 500,000 miles, your cost of repairs is gonna be enormous at that point. We're saying in this ordinance, 250,000 miles. What if you put a new transmission and a new engine in that truck? Okay, it's really difficult to wear the body of a truck out, okay? The frame and structure. So, like, we've got a couple of trucks, new engines and transmissions in them, you know, and we've already spent the money on those. That's the reason I'm saying safe and sound. I mean, there gets to a point of reality of truck looks bad or something like that, and we need to do something different for merely the look. You know, a new paint job is, you know, we discussed that at one point in time, and keep up the appearance. But yes, there comes a point where you have to retire a truck.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, I'm gonna be very hesitant to make any change where we have zero, or the ARB and anybody else has zero oversight over the age and miles on the truck.
Right, and I'll say this, when we say 250,000 miles, you have to half that, 125,000 miles, because remember, you gotta come back from where you go to. So let's just say we take our normal Dothan trip. So we're going 300 miles, give or take, to Dothan and 300 miles back. Okay, well, we're getting counted 600 miles toward that 250. We're going to calls in the city where there's no patients. We're running calls for the county and doing rolled over calls, which again, mileage, again, maybe you don't find no patient, maybe there's a patient there. And then you have trucks that are roaming with system status management around the city that are putting miles on the trucks, just going from one position to another posting position to get a better time, response time. So really, if you're looking at the 150,000, I was speaking with our ambulance broker in Canada, and he added it up. He's been doing this for a number of years. 250,000 miles, you're really gonna get paid about 62 to 65,000 miles paid transport time.
Yeah, I would just say that's being in the ambulance business.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
the
makes
cost
it
of
business.
doing their business.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, regardless of why the miles were driven, they were driven to put on the vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
I mean, and that's what you're counting towards, so.
How many miles does one of your trucks average a year?
You know,
I it's tough.
it's very, very tough to say that because right now,
Herman, I know, I'm good with him going through these, and explaining, I'm okay with that.
I understand, but.
If we get off topic, we'll
That's fine, but
stop.
no, but each person that shows up is entitled to the same. And I understand this is a little bit different. How many ordinances we got?
Like 9,
All right, so 3 minutes per ordinance seems to be.
that would be a long time.
That'd be a long time.
I don't wanna stay that long.
I
I don't wanna stay that long.
I'm okay
do
with
that
him
in a
I just
explaining.
wanna make sure that we treat everybody the same.
Thanks, Herman.
Thank you. I'm for David, share whatever he needs to.
No, this is
Here's
good.
now, it's later, which is good.
No, this is.
Herman, I'll move very quickly. I promise. Guys, I'll move quickly.
No, we're
To
asking for
answer your
it.
question, about 70,000 miles a year is what it's looking like. Again, you've got first run trucks and second run trucks. Your first run trucks is your 911 provided trucks that you're gonna do your emergency response. Then you got your transporter trucks, which are gonna have more miles because they're doing that Golden Triangle call. They're doing that Dothan call or wherever that might be. So just maybe some adjustment. We could almost live with the miles, but the year model of the truck, I see no relevance in the year model of the truck. So we would ask that the year model be taken away, or the number of years, if you could. Just straightforward with the council, in 2004 was the last year that they made 7.3 liter diesels for the Fords. If I could go back and buy 12 7.4 liter diesel, or 7.3, excuse me.
Because those
I would do it.
numbers are wrong.
There's a reason they quit making them, because they didn't sell parts for them. So, nevertheless, I would do that. So I see no relevance for the
See-
age of the truck.
Do you have more comfort in the mileage without the age?
About 300,000 on the miles, and
Okay.
then
Would-
the age.
How much of your fleet would fall in line with that if those changes were made?
We've got, some of our second run trucks that are over 300,000 miles.
So how many are within the 250, if it were 250?
Yes, I would say probably, the whole fleet, you're probably looking at 3/4. 3/4 of the whole.
Yeah, how many would have
Oh,
under
within.
250?
Oh, I'm sorry, I
in the whole
misunderstood.
fleet?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Two, sorry about that.
Okay.
Would be two in that, okay? Those are the 2018 and 19s, and I'll share this very, very quickly. On that, new is not always better. Both of our 2018 brand-new trucks that we're still in debt for, we've replaced both engines and 3 transmissions. That's, new is not always better, and that was a mistake for us. Really, really quickly, based on fractal response times, we go to section 323, the 540 seconds, that's national standard. Under the NFPA, we agree with that. The $5,000 penalty,
Better than 10.
it's better than 10. Mr. McMasters, you're exactly right about that. We would like to see either the monetary penalty, we can live with the monetary penalty, or we can live with the points penalty. But to do both, I think is just somewhat overboard as that. Let's move down to section 5 really, really quick. About rolled calls counting against us. Gentlemen, this is a Pandora's box, to say the least, with vipers on the inside. We cannot control how long of time our ambulances stay inside the hospital. It's been proven. We cannot control that. We look at rolled calls. The rolled calls have been because we've been in the hospitals. Okay, so we do not agree with a rolled call counting against us. It's gonna happen. Definitely gonna happen. But 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's gonna happen because we've had a backup in the emergency department.
But you can request an exception for that?
Well, it all lies, according to the ordinance, the exception lies to be granted in the EMS coordinator. So.
But you document that, when you're there and you're backed up, you ready to, hey, we've been sitting here 20 minutes waiting to offload.
Yes, sir.
So
We do
that's
document that. Yes, sir. We do document that. So we disagree with that. I mean, we could take and just throw a lot of documentation and data at you when we look at this rolled calls, and it's gonna convolute everything. That's just something better left alone as far as rolled calls go. We agree with the response time exemptions being left in place. When you get caught by a train, we have only a few overpasses here in the city of Decatur. We agree with the audited financial statement being deleted on that. We go down to the other section, H would be on the same section 320. Again, claims not against the umbrella corporation, but claims against the actual, if there was a patient care issue with that. 332, we've been in agreement with that since 2019 of repealing that. 338, or 3.38.
338,
I want to be very clear. We do not charge for medications. We do not charge for IVs. Okay? We cannot charge for that. When Mr. Alexander is talking about a payment package, that has to do with the employees that are on the truck. A paramedic is always an ALS call. You're gonna get a higher reimbursement from Medicare, which is not very much, but we're gonna get that. It has to do with the crew that's on the truck. We do not sell, we have a license to administer medication to the patient. We do not have a license to sell medications, nor give away medications at that point either. So I just wanted to be clear about that. That's it.
So in a nutshell, for a long time, you talked about doing away with performance bond, doing away with audited financial statement, getting your minute in PJ, getting your minute in the city limits. This does that, correct?
It does a lot of it, yes, sir.
So you're very happy right now.
Not very happy, but we can work together. We can work together and make it happen. We just wanna be treated fair and equal.
Yeah, I mean, I work for an organization that does business with businesses like yours and governmental and quasi-governmental by the definition given. And there are very different criteria we ask for on an application. And that's just the nature of those differences in businesses. I do it every single day. And it's not preferential treatment to one or the other. It's just the nature of those structures are very different from a private, individual owned, business. But I do think there's some progress. I agree with you on some of the points you made, and I think we'll continue moving forward. So I appreciate you
Thank you.
coming, and I think Chip's worked hard in ARB and trying to bridge some of these gaps. I know you aren't quite happy yet, but
We on
Well,
so that means everything's been perfect, right?
well, we're all working toward a common goal, and that's where we need to stay focused on. And I appreciate the time here to speak with you. If you have any questions, obviously email or telephone me. I'm available 24 hours a day, 10 days a week.
okay.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Math. Mr. Kirby is gonna.
Mr. Claus, wait, I'll be quick.
I'm only giving you.
You got a timer going.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
I want to make a couple of points, please. Charles Kirby, 1706 Sanders Street Southwest. Because an exemption form is filled out, doesn't mean it's reasonably reviewed and authorized. At a recent ARB meeting, there was 2 calls totaling, I believe, 9 total seconds, declined on the exception forms, even though there was evidence that the 911 dispatch on each of those calls was more than 30 seconds late dispatching the ambulance, resulting in proposed fines of thousands of dollars. So keep in mind that a lot of what you're hearing is not everything that's happening, okay? Now, on the quasi...
Just real quick, are you saying that the exemptions are not being reviewed correctly?
Let me just say that there's a motive to deny them.
Okay.
I was at a meeting prior to the ARB at the Flint Training Center where Chief Grandy held a meeting. And one of his people stood up and said, you gave us 150 exemption forms last month and we're going to get rid of those things. That was actually said by that department, okay? I was also present at multiple meetings where Chief Grandy said he wanted to extract a revenue source from that company. That was said, period, multiple times. The quasi-government. The hospital wants to be in the medical business. To be in the medical business, they intend to collect money, be in business, be in profit. The state does authorize the territory they can operate in. Just like if you start a small business tomorrow and you apply to the state for your name, they have to authorize that name before you can be in business. Okay? So quasi-government isn't because the state sanctions something. Doesn't necessarily make them quasi-government. They are in business for a profit. Whatever rules you make, good or bad, whatever burden you guys carry, no matter what you do, half of everybody's going to be upset with it, okay? Make the rules the same for everybody. The rules being same for everybody is the most fair thing that you can do. Last point I'll make to you is the letter from the state about the supplies. It wasn't really the way I understood it about medications. It was about anti-kickback rules. And the very fact that they've never allowed those supplies to knowingly be taken off of ambulances. It's a way for the system to go wrong.
Thank you for your time, I appreciate you listening.
Thanks, Charles. Any other questions, comments? All right. All right, anything else from any directors? There's a few of you left. Anything from the mayor? Anything else from council?
Good meeting.
All right, thanks, we're dismissed.